Thank you for your invitation, for being here. I have to start with a confession. As I was preparing for my visit here, I found it challenging to keep track of all of the names of the new businesses in digital entertainment. Boxy, Roku, Vudu, Hulu, Lala, Miro, Vooz. In my linguistic bewilderment, I was reminded of the story of Babel. Out of curiosity, I went back and reread it. It was not what I recalled. I had remembered it as the story of a people who were punished because they tried to storm heaven and challenge God. What I found instead was a description of the first entertainment business model in the history of the world. Here are the verses where the people of Babel describe their project. "We can bring ourselves together," they said, "like stone on stone. Use brick for stone, bake it until it's hard. For mortar, they heated bitumen. If we bring ourselves together," they said, "we can build a city and tower, its top touching the sky, to arrive at fame. Without a name, we're unbound, scattered over the face of the earth." Their project is to achieve fame, a name. Babel, the first brand in history. The tower will be visible from far, far away. It will capture the attention of the world. It will advertise the genius of the builders. People will marvel, how did they do it? The answer is what the Greeks called techne, craft, and what we call technology. They knew how to bake bricks, how to cement them with hot bitumen, how to design a structure that would not collapse of its own weight, how to manage a huge workforce. If we build it, they will come. And if they come, they will spend money. Here's the business model. The company is Babel Inc. Its product is the tower. The tower is marketed to the audience. The audience's attention is monetized. God, of course, was not pleased. Not because humans wanted to storm the heavens. That's not in the story. It's because the humans wanted fame, a name. And in God's kingdom, there was room for only one name, one star. So he destroyed the project, not with an earthquake or a fire, but by destroying their communication. He baffled their tongue. If they can't network, they can't be in the attention business. Now, let's fast forward about 5,000 years. Another brand, visible throughout the world, monetizing attention. Before I went to USC, as Mariché said, I spent 12 years in Hollywood at Walt Disney Studios, first as an executive and then as a screenwriter and producer. Before that, I was a speechwriter in presidential politics, but that's another story. My years at Disney, from 1985 through 1996, marked the end of the analog era in communication. I didn't know this at the time, of course. All stories are easier to tell in hindsight. The digital era that succeeded it is still unfolding, but today it seems almost safe to say that if you can imagine a technological innovation, it will one day exist. In fact, to glimpse the future of communication, it is not necessary to imagine anything. Professor Castells put it this way: the technological possibility of a global, quasi-ubiquitous wireless broadband network already exists, thereby increasing the potential for multimodal communication, of any kind of data in any kind of format from anyone to anyone and from everywhere to everywhere. It is the users of that broadband technology that I want to focus on. In the context of entertainment, they are the people formerly known as the audience. I want to look at what happened when the analog audience became what Professor Castells calls the network society. I'm going to call them the digital audience. It's a misleading term, I know. Audience is too passive a word for producer consumers. So forgive me for using it as a shorthand for who they or we are. The story I'm going to tell is this: the dramatic transformation of the audience from analog to digital has forced an equally dramatic transformation of the entertainment industry's business models. I'm going to look at two businesses that have already been devastated by that transformation: music and newspapers. And at two other businesses, movies and TV, that are desperately trying to figure out how to prevent what happened to music and newspapers from happening to them. So who is this digital audience? How do they use media? The digital audience is interactive. Once they were the object of communication, now they're also the subject. The digital audience is creative. The consumer of content is also the producer of content. The digital audience is global. I will be speaking about the US entertainment industry, but of course the media ecosystem is worldwide. The digital audience is autonomous. As Manuel and Imatubea discovered in their study of internet users in Catalonia, the digital audience says, I am in charge of my attention, not you. The digital audience wants choice. I construct my own basket of media content. I am the curator, the editor, the bundler, not you. The digital audience wants convenience. I will get content when I want and where I want, and I will consume and produce and interact with media when I want and where I want. The digital audience is social. One-to-many mass communication has become, in Manuel's formulation, mass self-communication. I would add that participation in social media has become a form of entertainment, no less captivating than movies and TV. There is one more dimension I want to add: economic, but that is a battlefield. Optimists say that the digital audience inhabits a gift economy. Its practices include sharing and barter. Its values include trust and consensus. It is not opposed to the market economy, but it requires mutuality and fairness from business transactions. Pessimists say the digital audience is an outlaw economy. It violates copyright, steals content, and seeks revenge on what it regards as greedy corporations. In the middle are the anthropologists. To them, it's a tribal economy, a matter of culture. As Spain's Minister of Culture says, traditionally, in Mediterranean countries, it's hard for people to understand that immaterial things can be worth as much as material things. Perhaps all these are true, activated by different circumstances. In what follows, we will see that play out. The first entertainment business to have its business model disrupted by the digital audience was the recorded music industry. Here is the music industry's business model as it stood at the end of the analog age. A vertically integrated oligopoly of 5 record labels signs recording artists, bundles 12 of their songs together into an album, stamps them onto compact discs, packages the CDs in jewel boxes, distributes them to record stores, and sells them to customers for $17. Well, until the mid-1990s, it was a strong industry. Selling CDs was a high marginal profit business, and the labels controlled the distribution chain. But then MP3 files began spreading on the internet in 1994. 2 audio players, Winamp and MPG 123, were released in 1997. The Rio portable music player came out in 1998. These technological developments transformed the audience. If the music industry had listened to its newly digital audience, it would have heard this: I want choice. I don't want bundled albums. I want individual songs. But the industry feared losing control over content and distribution, and they feared that the lower marginal profit on songs would eat into their revenue. So when the audience said, I want to be creative, I want to make my own playlists, the industry replied, no, you must buy indivisible packages that we make for you. The audience said, I want convenience. Don't make me store these CDs, and don't make me pay for their manufacturing costs. All I want is files, just the intellectual part of intellectual property, not the tangible property part. But the industry replied, no, we're selling CDs, objects, not files. The audience said, I want to acquire my music when I want and where I want. And the industry said, no, you go to the record store. The audience said, I want to share my files with my friends. And the industry said, do it and we will prosecute you. And so the music industry could not have done a better job of driving its customers into the arms of Napster when it came on the scene in 1999. When the industry saw Napster acquire millions of users, it might have told its audience, stealing songs is wrong, but you're online and we're going to follow you there. We're going to transform our business model. Instead of forcing a $17 CD down your throat, we're going to buy Napster and turn it into a subscription site or maybe a micropayment site. It will be fast, fair, easy, cheap, and virus-free. Instead, the labels shut down Napster's free file sharing and tried to shame their former customers into coming back. It didn't work. So then the industry felt forced to go online, but they proved that they didn't get it. By offering incompatible formats for music and players, sold with heavy digital rights management restrictions at exorbitant prices from incompatible online retailers whose stunningly brain-dead features, that's a quote from this article, earn them a place in the top 25 worst tech products of all time. Well, panic broke out. Instead of transforming their dying business model, the industry tried to prop it up by cutting CD prices at big stores like Walmart, which only further reduced their revenue. But then, in 2001, someone took advantage of this war and actually listened to the digital audience, not a music label, an outsider. Apple said to consumers, you want convenience, you want choice, you want a mobile device for your MP3s? Well, Here it is. And then, in 2003, Apple put the record store online. It offered unbundled, easy access, virus-free, downloadable songs. Apple told the industry that the price had to be 99 cents per song. Apple calculated that the digital audience would find that fair, even if it meant living with Apple's digital rights management and being locked into Apple's devices. The desperate labels felt they had to accept Apple's pricing. They cannibalized their revenue stream, exchanging retail dollars for digital pennies. They sold online rights cheaper than the big stores could sell CDs, hoping that volume would make up for lower margin. It didn't. In 2008, iTunes became the top US retailer of music. In 2010, iTunes sold its 10 billionth song. Today, it accounts for 70% of worldwide online digital music sales, which is a tiny percentage of all of the copyright-protected files that are exchanged on peer-to-peer sites. And what has this catastrophe taught the music industry? Consider this. On the one hand, in July, this coming July, through its new acquisition, Lala, Apple will start using cloud computing to stream music from the internet. But at the same time, Universal Music, the old, will be testing whether maybe $10 is the magic price where people will gladly buy CDs. The digital audience is a decade into the 21st century, but the music industry is still trying to turn back the clock. There's iTunes. Now let's turn to how the digital audience transformed another sector of the entertainment industry, publishing, or specifically newspapers. Newspaper readers enthusiastically embraced a digital publishing model for papers, but the newspaper industry failed to figure out a digital business model to monetize their products online. The results have been catastrophic. This was the model, the business model of the newspaper industry at the end of the analog era. A perishable product made from expensive paper and ink, distributed top-down to a passive audience. Newspaper content is monetized in three ways: subscription, pay per copy, and ads. But most of the revenue, 80% of the revenue, comes from advertising. Half of that is retail advertising, and 40% of it is classified advertising. So, here is how they were doing with their analog audience. Unlike music, newspapers embraced the internet. They decoupled journalism from the physical object of the paper. They followed the digital audience online and were responsive to its values of choice, convenience, interactivity, and creativity. The newspaper industry saw that publishing once a day made no sense for a when I want it digital audience. So they made the expensive decision to become 24/7 producers of continuously updated multimedia content. The industry saw that the digital audience wanted to interact with media, so papers engaged in a conversation with them, invited and posted their comments, asked them to vote in polls and surveys. The industry saw that the audience was creative, wanted to produce as well as consume, so they invited readers to become citizen journalists, to tip them off to stories, to send them video of what was happening in their neighborhoods. Newspapers vowed not to make the same mistake as music. Unfortunately, they made a different mistake. They calculated that the core of their business model, advertising, would work on the internet the same as it had in print. They calculated that the best way to get the biggest online audience and the most advertising revenue was to give their content away for free. Imagine what might have happened instead if newspapers had started out online with a micropayment or a metered payment model, or if the rest of the industry had done what Dow Jones almost alone did with the Wall Street Journal and put its content behind a subscription wall. But they didn't. Instead, newspapers Napsterized themselves. Today, a generation of American news consumers who have only read newspapers online assumes that the natural and inevitable and only conceivable price point for journalistic content is nothing. The industry's calculation that online advertising would work as well as print advertising turned out to be a colossal mistake for three reasons. First, in the analog age, newspapers had a monopoly on classified ads for jobs, cars, housing, personals, buying and selling, and all the other commerce of the marketplace. But sites like Craigslist, eBay, Monster, Beep Beep broke that monopoly, and they innovated with pictures and interactivity and community rankings of sellers. Second, publishers thought that analog retail advertising would work online. But digital readers say they ignore ads. In a recent survey, an astonishing 79% of newspaper readers said they have never or rarely clicked on an online ad. And even if they radically underestimate the impact that online ads have on them, the metrics that papers use to calculate the impact of those ads are too primitive to justify higher rates. Third, there are profound differences between consuming information online and offline. A print newspaper is a bundle, a collection of news, opinion, sports, entertainment, and all the other elements that editors curate into a branded package that bearing the paper's distinctive personality and balance. But the digital audience unbundled newspapers into articles, and they decoupled articles from the identity and authority of their brands. Online readers use search engines to curate their own information and hyperlinks to jump from one story to another. Aggregators became the new brands. Moreover, the creative audience talks to itself, produces its own news and opinion to compete with professional journalism. Blogging and all the other forms of social media give anyone the power to create, edit, aggregate, market, and distribute information. Analog journalism is privileged discourse, but online newspapers are just another booth in the great digital bazaar, a noisy midway of news, music, videos, commerce, and every other kind of content, all of them clamoring for attention. So here's what happened when they made that gamble. Just since 2007, 165 American newspapers have stopped publishing, and about 15,000 reporters and editors have lost their jobs. Rupert Murdoch and Axel Springel think the enemy is Google, but Google only gives readers a few words and a link. It is the newspaper publishers, not Google, who killed their own industry. The digital audience did not demand free content. What it demanded was autonomy, controlling its own attention, a value that a purely market economy was unprepared to respect. If online readers had been asked to pay a fair price for journalism from the start, if the industry had tried the metered systems that the New York Times and Murdoch's British papers are only now adopting, or if an innovative system appropriate to a gift economy, like a new service called Kachingle, had been tried, then a new model for monetizing news might have been part of the online news culture from the beginning. Or maybe Apple has figured it out. One of the reasons iTunes worked was how cool the device, the iPod, was. Today, the iPad has that coolness. Maybe young people who can't imagine paying for web content would gladly pay for an app to read a newspaper or magazine online. And maybe some demographic groups, like adults, will prefer to pay for the comfort of a walled garden on the iPad than to fend for themselves in the wild west of the web. Today, when executives in the movie and television business look at the music and newspaper businesses, the question they ask is, will we be the next domino to fall? Start with movies. There are 7 movie studios in Hollywood, all but MGM, part of vertically integrated global conglomerates that are also in businesses ranging from television, radio, music, and publishing to theme parks, mobile phones, e-commerce, and Broadway. The business model of the movie studios is based on the repeated marketing and distribution of the same content. They make money by selling and reselling the same intellectual property over and over, sometimes to the same consumer. They maximize revenue by cascading the movie through a sequence of media platforms and geographical territories that Hollywood calls the windows. Each window prices the product differently. So much for a movie ticket, so much for a DVD sale, so much for a rental, so much for a Blu-ray, so much for video on demand. The studios protect that pricing by adjusting the order and duration, and therefore the exclusivity of the windows. If you want to see it right now, here's what's available, and here's how much you'll have to pay. The sequence and timing of a movie's movement through those windows is determined by the highest marginal profit achievable in the least amount of time. Until recently, here's how it worked. Before a movie opens in theaters, there's an expensive marketing campaign to increase awareness and demand. Then there's the domestic theatrical release, a 4-month window of exclusivity. A month after domestic theatrical starts, the foreign theatrical window opens. Then there's a second expensive marketing campaign for DVDs. 4 months after the domestic theatrical, the domestic DVD window opens. A month later, the home video on demand window opens. The studio licenses the movie to cable operators and satellite providers. For a pay-per-view charge on top of your pay TV subscription, you can stream the movie on your TV. The foreign DVD window opens after the foreign theatrical exclusive. And then, anywhere between 2 and 15 months after the pay-per-view window, the studio licenses the movie to a cable or satellite channel that you pay a monthly premium for on top of your subscription. Ultimately, starting about 2 years after the theatrical release, the studio licenses the movie to commercial TV. The whole game of the movie business is controlling and protecting the sequence and exclusivity and duration and pricing of these windows. And of all the windows, there's one that the studios care the most about. As you can see, the biggest source of revenue to the studios, nearly 2/3, is DVDs. That's why that window is so important to them. But DVD sales have declined by 27% in the last 2 years. If you're a movie executive, you can see why this graph reminds you of what happened to music and what happened to newspapers. DVDs is why the studios are afraid of being the next domino to fall. So why has DVD revenue fallen? The first answer everyone gives is piracy. Thanks to digital technology, it is now possible to go online on any computer in the world and get an illegal copy of virtually any movie for free, or to buy a high-quality DVD of almost any new movie on the street for a couple of dollars. South Korea, in 2006, the studios had a $1.3 billion market in that country. In 2007, the bit rate of its broadband was increased. By 2009, DVD sales in South Korea had fallen to 80 million. Here in Spain, as you know, consumer spending on DVDs and home video fell from over 260 million in 2004 to 191 million in 2009. The number of DVDs sold or rented fell by 30%. At the same time, it's been estimated that illegal movie downloads went from 132 million a year in 2006 to 350 million in 2008, and I read in the newspaper on Monday, to 1 billion in 2009. So that's one reason why the studios are moving toward simultaneous worldwide theatrical release. The movie comes now in theaters all around the world at the same time. They're giving up the territory windows because global piracy defeats them. So why is illegal file sharing so widespread? Is it because digital technology put a dangerous tool in people's hands? Did digital technology turn honest people into lawbreakers? Or is it because people simply find it more convenient? They want movies when they want and where they want, and they tell themselves that the studios won't feel it if they get it using BitTorrent. Or are they getting even for being frustrated by the studios? They want a fast, easy, fairly priced online option now, and instead they're angry at being victims of the studio's dependence on DVDs. I believe illegal file sharing is a symptom. The cause is the industry's failure so far to adequately transform its Windows business model. You might think that the studios would want to depend less on DVDs and more on other income streams, but they are trapped in that dependence by decisions they themselves made. Until the late 90s, Hollywood propped up video rentals by pricing video sales at $55 to $60. But then the studios calculated that they'd make more money if they lowered the retail price of DVD sales. So they pressured the big stores to set DVD prices below $16, and they set out to convince the public to collect a DVD library. That strategy worked for a while. It led to the DVD high-water mark of $21 billion in 2005. But then it stopped working. People realized that they only watched a DVD once. Sales volume fell, but the studios couldn't raise the price again. Worse, pricing DVDs so low meant that newcomers like Netflix and Redbox could buy DVDs from stores and then turn around and rent them to consumers, a transaction that made money for Netflix and Redbox, but nothing for the studios. To fight them, the studios this year went to court to force Netflix and Redbox to give stores a give studios a 28-day window before they start renting out new movies. To further boost DVD sales, Disney, starting with Alice in Wonderland, shortened the theatrical window to 3 months and moved up the DVD release and video on demand. But theater owners complained, and other studios may not follow Disney's lead. Just 2 weeks ago, regulators gave the movie industry a waiver to take what they're calling selectable output control of consumers' cable and satellite boxes, to show a movie on home TV soon after or even at the same time as its release in theaters at a big premium. But the biggest change to Windows is this. Pressure from the digital audience is forcing the studios to crack open 2 new internet windows for online downloads and for streaming video on demand. The digital audience wants easy online access to new movies without having to wait for weeks or months after the DVD comes out, and they want it at a fair price. When should those internet windows open, and how much should they cost? The studios are experimenting with the answer. Hollywood is struggling to give the digital audience the convenience it demands without at the same time cannibalizing its DVD revenue. The problem is that maximizing its DVD revenue depends on inconveniencing the digital audience. The whole idea of the Windows system is to frustrate the audience enough so that they will break down and choose an earlier window with the higher profit margin for the studios. But the studios don't know if opening up these new options will risk driving digital audiences into the arms of the pirates. One writer called this maybe the mother of all windows, that the online pay-per-view will eat all the other windows. That'll be the only way that people will consume and bring the whole Windows model crashing down. Now let's turn to television. This is the business model of broadcast television. The 5 broadcast networks market and distribute programming. Much of it they create and own themselves. Some of it they get from the studios. Broadcast television brands itself as free TV because there's no subscription charge, just advertising. They air their content on a time grid, carefully plotting programming and counter-programming strategies for each night of the week, aiming to capture audiences at the beginning of prime time and hold them on that channel until they go to bed. Broadcast TV's big problem is that its advertising revenue is falling. Why is their advertising revenue falling? Well, look at what happened to the viewership of television. The decline began when cable TV came along, with hundreds of channels to compete with networks. Today, big audiences only show up for special events like the Oscars or the Super Bowl, or the last episode of a hit series like Lost, where a 30-second ad costs $900,000. But a 30-second ad on a show with average ratings like The Simpsons only brings the network $200,000. American TV actually has 2 business models because there are 2 TV industries, broadcast and cable and satellite. Both of them depend on advertising, but cable and satellite depend on subscription as well. Here in Europe, of course, satellite is the big player, but in the US, though 32 million people subscribe to satellite, 80% of the country is wired for cable. To complicate things, there are actually 2 cable businesses. One are the companies that put the cables, the pipes, into people's homes. The top 10 companies serve 2/3 of the subscribers in the US. They provide the pipes, not the content. The other cable business is the cable channels, the 1,000+ cable networks that provide the programming that flows through the pipes. The cable operators license this content from the studios and other suppliers. 26 of the top 30 cable channels are owned by the same big media companies that own the movie studios and the broadcast TV networks. 15 to 20 of those channels are packaged in a bundle called basic cable, which you get for paying a monthly subscription. Most people get expanded basic cable, which gets you 30 to 90 channels. Virtually all these stations carry advertising, so you pay for cable twice, once with your subscription and a second time with your time and attention. Cable is expensive. Its cost has been going up at 3 times the rate of inflation. And if you want more channels, premium channels, you have to pay more for them, which can easily double the price. A lot of consumers are angry with the cable operators because they're forced to pay for cable channels they don't watch. Instead, they want what's called a la carte pricing. But the cable operators refuse, saying that it's the bundling that helps the channels with fewer viewers to survive. The biggest threat to advertiser-supported TV is the DVR. Today, 1 in 4 U.S. households has a DVR. It's expected to be 42% in 2 years. Many people hate ads, so they fast forward through them. The DVR gives the digital audience the autonomy they insist on. I control my attention, not you. You can't sell my attention to advertisers. DVR time shifting also kills the network's programmer's strategy of appointment TV. I watch when I want, not when you want. My time, not prime time. So the scheduling grid has lost its authority. The unit of television has become the program, not the network. So the television industry, losing money, is doing everything it can think of to deal with it. Here are a few ways. The Nielsen, the ratings company, is now not only measuring how many people are watching a show live, they're also adding to it how many people watch it on their DVR in the next 7 days. And soon they're going to measure TV content consumed on the internet as well. Product placement and brand integration. As Marichet's paper for the Lear Center, The Future of Television, shows, brands and products are now woven into the storylines and dialogues of show. One advertising executive said he thinks that when people skip ads, there will be a way to sponsor the fast forward. This fast forward is brought to you by Mercedes-Benz. Unscripted programming. To save money, the networks have dropped half of the comedy and drama series they used to program and replaced them with so-called reality shows and contests. One episode of a drama like Law and Order can cost $3 million. One episode of America's Top Model costs $100,000. They're using social media. The networks know that fans of Glee can turn to YouTube and Facebook for exclusive trailers and teasers of upcoming episodes. And they turn the show into a shared viewing experience through glitter. On the nights it's on, the show dominates Twitter's trending topics. Fox has even teamed up with MySpace to hold an online casting call for Glee's second season. Retransmission fees. It used to be that the networks paid the cable operators to carry their programming, but now the networks charge the cable operators for their programming. So now networks like Fox and ABC want to replace their lost revenue by asking the cable operators to pay them more. A few months ago, Fox demanded that Cablevision triple the amount per viewer they paid. Fox and Time Warner took out full-page ads in the newspapers, ironically, to accuse each other of mafia-like behavior. The increased cable fees to the networks, of course, are passed on to cable suppliers. Intellectual property. Unauthorized series with their ads removed are showing up on YouTube and other sites. Their owners are fighting back. Today, Viacom is suing Google for $1 billion for uploading pirated Viacom content like South Park and SpongeBob SquarePants onto YouTube. But Google says that the shows were actually uploaded by Viacom's marketing staff in order to promote their series. But these cost-cutting steps don't address the underlying problem. An entire digital generation is already watching TVs and movies on their computers and on internet-connected TV and video game platforms and Blu-ray. The use of video sharing sites like YouTube has nearly doubled in the past 3 years. But YouTube and similar sites don't give viewers all the video they want. That's why the digital audience started clamoring for a new window: online, on-demand, streaming video. Well, the TV industry wanted to follow the digital audience, but the thought of an on-demand online window drives the cable operators crazy. The cable companies see streaming TV on the internet as an end run around cable and a huge threat to their base, especially young people who are used to watching video online and don't understand why they have to pay a cable subscription on top of an internet subscription. 4 years ago, Anne Sweeney, the president of Disney ABC Television Group, said something surprising and shrewd. We understand now that piracy is a business model. It exists to serve a need in the market for consumers who want TV content on demand. Pirates compete the same way we do, through quality, price, and availability. We don't like the model, but we realize it's competitive enough to make it a major competitor going forward. We've created a strategy to address this with attractive, easy-to-use ways for viewers to get the content they want from us legally. In other words, keeping honest people honest, she said. The strategy she's talking about is Hulu. Hulu was begun by Disney, which was joined by Fox and NBC. It's an ad-supported site where Americans can legally stream TV shows like Lost, Grey's Anatomy, The Simpsons. In volume, nearly 1 billion streams a year, it is the #2 video site behind YouTube, and it's growing. Last month's streams are 500% over the year before. On Hulu, programs contain about 1/4 the number of ads as on TV. You can't fast forward through them. You have to sit through them. In many cases, at the beginning of a show, viewers are offered a choice as to which product's ads they want to watch, or whether they prefer a longer pre-roll ad to interruptions in the middle. Brand recall and engagement for this model have been called nothing short of phenomenal, which is why Hulu can charge about double the rates of TV ads. Hulu has shown a profit the last 2 quarters. But some content suppliers are keeping their shows off Hulu because they're afraid that the digital ad revenues won't compensate them for the loss of subscribers. Viacom pulled some of its most popular shows off of Hulu because they weren't getting a big enough share of the revenue. And now there's talk about changing Hulu's models. Some of its suppliers want Hulu to increase the number of ads per shows. Others want to put Hulu behind a paywall, and it looks as though that's going to happen, to have a monthly subscription for premium programming, or if you don't want to watch ads. Last year, 22% of American adults said they cut back or canceled cable. 1/3 of them stream video from websites like Hulu on their TV sets with devices like Roku and Boxee, using hubs and interfaces like Miru, Voodoo, and Vooz. Comcast, the biggest cable company, is fighting back with something called Xfinity. It's a website offering free on-demand access to streaming content, except that free means you already have to be paying Comcast as a subscriber. And free also means watching the same load of ads online as on TV. But Comcast has bigger plans, a $36 billion purchase of the NBC network and Universal Studios from General Electric. If the regulators let that deal stand, it will be a Hulu killer. If Comcast can make consumers to subscribe to cable and watch ads, it's not going to let a free ad-supported internet channel cannibalize its base of paying subscribers. When network executives hear that TV on the internet will doom their business, they counter that no web model can supply enough revenue for them to produce the kind of programming that the audience wants. What that ignores is that the digital audience also wants Charlie Bit My Finger. Charlie Bit My Finger is a 1-minute amateur video that has been watched by more people than the viewership of American Idol, Dancing with the Stars, and the Super Bowl combined. Rupert Murdoch says web users will have to pay for what they watch and use. The former head of Fox and Paramount, Barry Diller, says web content is not free and it's not going to be free. Stephen Brill, whose company Journalism Online aims to help publishers to force online readers to subscribe to papers, he says web content users just need to get back into the habit of paying for content online. But as Professor Clay Shirky says, what Murdoch, Diller, and Brill really mean is this: web users will have to pay for what they watch and use, or else we will have to stop making content in the costly and complex way we have grown accustomed to making it, and we don't know how to do that. In other words, the business models that worked for the industry in the analog past will not work in the digital future. They are collapsing of their own costliness and complexity. What is required is not more sophisticated adaptation of the old models, but transformation to new models. We live in a time of radical innovation, and with radical innovation comes creative destruction. Media monopolies are not exempt from that bewildering disruption. The old industry's profits have stopped their ascent to the heavens. The digital audience has baffled the tongue of the old builders, confounding them, forcing them to abandon the tower, to scatter. The way to ruin is to remain stuck in Babel. The way forward, I think, is to build new towers somewhere else. Thank you very much.